There is something that we like to do before we start our interviews with our guests, Philip. You know what that is?
I do know what that is, Dwayne.
You do? Well,
I do.
You've got to be a bit more surprised than that.
Oh,
We're going to jump down the rabbit
Dwayne?
hole. We're going to jump down the rabbit hole. Let's go. And we cannot have an episode without Bingo in the background, so thank you very much, Bingo. Appreciate that.
Bit of music, I'll go on.
And Bingo's in the rabbit hole with us too. So I was inspired. This question came to me when I was listening to the latest War Master box set, Solitary Confinement. And I listened to that based on your opinion of it, Philip, because you thought it was pretty good.
I did indeed.
And I know Lizzie has written at least one War Master episode. I think it may be just the one in the last one, not in the most recent one. But you wrote one in Escape from Reality. Is that right, Lizzie?
I've written a few now for Derek Jacobi's Master, and I get confused which collections they're in. I've just got another one that's due to come out soon. It's due to record soon, which I actually wrote apart for myself because I thought I'm sick of writing so much for Derek Jacobi and not actually having met him. So I thought I'd bang myself in that one. But yeah, this was an early surprise challenge from Scott Hancock because we suddenly had David Tennant available. So when I first started writing it, we didn't know which Doctor it was going to be for. We just knew that he was going to meet one of them. So the story was planned before we actually knew we were going to have Tennant in it. And it was my first writing for Jacobi, and I just got hooked immediately.
Now, Lizzie, you know what I'm going to ask because I've given you some forewarning, but the fun part of the rabbit hole topic is that I don't tell Philip at all what I'm going to ask. My question to you, Philip, so we'll start with you so you have absolutely zero time to think about it, is there's a lot of attention on antagonists these days. We seem to have a lot more interest in following antagonists like the Master, so much so that they're now the stars of their own box sets. So are heroes gone? Are we more interested in the antagonists these days? Where are the heroes gone, Philip?
I don't think heroes are gone. I think heroes are being slightly redefined at the moment, and I think we are trying to explore characters in a more complex and three-dimensional way. So in terms of the black and white hero villain, I think they're gone, and that's probably a good thing. I think we've worked out that life is far more complex than just the black and white. And so part of the consequence of that is, of course, that the antagonist gets a larger play. But there's also recognition that heroes also have dark sides. So I think a lot of our heroes, I'm a strong believer that our strengths and weaknesses are the same things, just different sides of the same coin. So I think the things that we are really good and strong at can also be our great weaknesses. And so, being strong and confident becomes arrogant and proud. And so we need to always watch what are our strengths and weaknesses, because I think they're often the same sort of things, and certainly how they're perceived by others. So no, I don't think the hero's gone, but I do think the hero has been redefined. And I don't know. I haven't had much more time to think about that. What do other people think?
That was a very good answer, Philip, for having zero forethought. What are your thoughts, Lizzie, on the topic of being more interested in antagonists these days?
I can, from my own perspective, I always have been. So really, I'm kind of this new interest, if you perceive it that way, I'm entering a heyday, because if the spotlight's on it, then it's something that I can get on board with. I've been a horror fan all my life, and I've always wondered why. My brother and I watch all kinds of horrors, and sometimes you turn away from a film and look at each other and go, we crossed a line. We really crossed a line. And it forced me to wonder why I'm attracted to the villains and why I'm interested in horror so much. And I think it's because I enjoy being horrified. I enjoy being thrilled, because you don't have that in real life. I don't have it in real life. And it's something that produces a response that is unfamiliar, and a terrifying thing. I enjoy being terrified. I know plenty of people don't. And maybe that's our fascination, in that we want continuous thrills. We want to be horrified by a new thing. And there's a lot of horror that I don't enjoy. There's a lot of horror that really does cross lines. But I remember when The Boys came out. Do you watch that series?
I haven't seen it, no.
I think it's New Zealand, and it kind of subverts the superhero genre, in that all the superheroes in The Boys, I think season 4 is about to come out now, so that they are products of consumerism. They are employed because they have these superhero powers, but they're employed for merchandise purposes, and they make movies, and the whole genre kind of went on its head. So they're not heroes in any way, but they're sold as heroes. And I just lap that up. And I think we like to see the baddies, and we are fascinated in the baddies. And it was only a matter of time when they got their own movies. Does that answer your question a little bit? I don't know. I'm biased because I love that stuff anyway.
Well, it's interesting because I've always had a fascination in true crime. So my fascination with that is why I'm interested in the motivation behind people, because some of these horrendous things that people do, I'm curious to know always what led them down that path. And Philip, I think I may have mentioned it before, but Sharaz-Jek from the Caves of Androzani was a character in Doctor Who that really sparked my interest in the baddie. He was presented as a bad guy, but he wasn't the real... Well, he was the villain in the piece because he was doing some horrible things, but there was an even bigger villain who had caused Sharaz-Jek to go crazy in the first place and do things. So I think it's that complexity in the villain that I certainly have an interest in, because in that case, Sharaz-Jek, I was interested in knowing his motivation and what caused him to go that crazy in the first place. And it was a very good reason. Whereas characters like the War Master, Derek Jacobi's portrayal in particular, are a little bit different the way they do things, because they often present his master as a character who is sympathetic, but they always twist it at the end to sort of bring us all back to the fact that, no, he really is this really big, bad, evil guy. And I noticed they do that a lot with the War Master. So we always kind of want to be sympathetic to his master, and we sort of can feel ourselves being sympathetic, but it always twists back to, oh yes, we realise this guy really is the big baddie. Is that what you tend to do with the War Master when you're looking at that character, Lizzie?
I think you're going to get excited at the direction he's going in under Rob Valentine now. I think we're taking that even further. And I don't know how many spoilers I can give, but it's like when we've reached the end of the line with that trick. So now we're just going to push it.
Wow.
And I remember when I first researched the War Master, Jacobi's master, before I was trying to get the voice right, because he is very, very different. And I just had to listen to it again and again. And I was compelled, not just from my fascination with horror, but so compelled by how dark he got and all the details, and a lot of the clever writers introducing things that weren't fully explained, but that made you think worse than what actually happened. You know, they're like planting seeds and then your mind does the rest. And I think that partly answers maybe your question, is why we're fascinated, because our capacity to imagine horrors is always worse than the thing itself. You know, like when the villain is exposed in most horror films, you're sometimes a little bit disappointed, because when your mind is given that free roam, you can come up with much worse things. And I think there's something about Jacobi that lures you in, because he's such a fabulous actor.
He's charming.
So many. Yeah, he's charming. He does it in the night garden. And then, of course, the rug is pulled out from under you. So, yeah, that trick kind of leads you down that path, and then your mind does a lot of the other things in the audio world, because that it's a fabulous way to do horror, isn't it? Because you have a lot of the story, but then your mind can do so much more because you're in charge of the visuals. But yeah, we are hopefully taking him in an even worse direction with the one I've just written anyway. Yeah, I don't know how much more I can say.
I can tell you how much more. None.
No more.
None.
It's a fascinating topic, and as I said, I think that the breadth of our stories have got wider and wider. It's created a bigger category of both hero and villain, and it just makes for more diverse and interesting storytelling.
Because inevitably, as an actor too, Lizzie, we always find that the actors always say we love getting our teeth into the villainous parts. It always seems to be the parts that the actors love most of all. Is that true, would you say?
Oh, unbelievable. Absolutely. Most actors I've heard say that, and it's always a joy when a part comes your way that you can be a little bit villainous in. And what's wonderful about, like you say, this new interest in giving villains their own franchises is that we're exploring their psychology a lot more. So it is no longer black and white, and that part of our fascination must be in identifying ourselves in those stories. That maybe explains the sudden explosion in true crime documentaries and series on TV. Certainly we had a lot more time in lockdown to explore all of that. That may be a reason why so much of it was made and is now being streamed, because we're fascinated in how we might have the capacity to do those things. And everyone's born human. I don't particularly believe people are born evil. I don't believe in a concept of evil in a religious sense. So where does it come from? And is it a product of environment, learned behavior, whatever? All of that stuff is truly fascinating. And from an actor's perspective, it's your job to come from a position of empathy. And I played Thatcher before lockdown. I didn't particularly want to do it, but I mean, to a lot of people, she's the embodiment of evil, and you have to do the research and find the humanity and find the links between you and this potential monster.
And she would not perceive herself in any way to be doing anything except what she would consider good. And so, you have to play a character who considers themselves totally good, and yet, did a few interesting things across the whole country.
Absolutely. So, it's a challenge, and it also exercises muscles that you don't use in daily life, thankfully, most of us. So it is interesting. And it's also, I have a great respect for actors who can really tread the line. When I see someone playing an out-and-out villain and they're choosing the black and white, making those black and white choices, I kind of think it cheapens things, really. I'm much more interested in someone like Jacoby, who can play a very charming villain, but in a way that no one's done before. That you, even though you've seen him be vile a million times, you still get taken in by him. I find that far cleverer as an actor to watch in other people.